doing business in Africa is actually not easy, and I realized this Swedish sort of very inclusive, flat structure. Come on, we're a team. We'll do this together. That didn't really work in Africa.
As WIT marks its 20th year in 2025, we turn the spotlight on our community to tell their stories and share their views on the evolution of online travel and technology. Conversations on Turning 20 is the collective story of WIT. As a Chinese saying goes, 以古为鉴，可以知兴替. By using history as a mirror, one can understand the rise and fall of things.
Before I started TravelStart, I actually started another OTA called Mr. Jet. And so let's just go back a little bit earlier. So I've got my background in travel. You know, I used to run the largest, I built the largest consolidator in Sweden, called International Tours. You know, I wanted to take some of those learnings and apply them in another area, but it is all about aggregating, you know, special deals and content that nobody else had, and so I knew that pretty well, and so I thought, how can we do this in a way where we actually don't have to issue tickets and stuff like that, and I started a company called Final Call, and the whole idea was that we aggregated, you know, content, and then people could access that content via these payphone numbers, you know, so press 1 from, you know, from Stockholm, press 2 to New York or whatever. And of course, these you know, hierarchies became very, very big and, you know, complicated, and it didn't take off. You know, I hadn't really thought that through. But and then at the same time, the Netscape browser came out. And immediately I thought, okay, obviously we need to do that, but we need to do it on this Netscape browser. And so we're talking about 96 or something like that. And eventually I got backing for that. That became Mr. Jet. And you know, I was fired by the investors there a year later. And Mr. Jet went on to become a household name, at least in Sweden. And I think Expedia owns it today. They own just about everything. I think I got $25,000 and kicked out through the door. The last thing I wanted to do was to start another OTA. But my wife basically said, that's the only thing you can. That's the only thing you know how to do. So this is probably what you should do. So I was sort of forced into a corner by her. You know, there was a whole bunch of defining moments, you know, early days, but they were really all about death, to be honest. You know, we were sort of, you know, running out of money after a year, so you know, how could I find money? Well, a smart young student told me, what people do is they write these, you know, reports that people want, and they do them as a way to you know, create awareness about themselves. So I hired him to write us this quite thick report about the emerging online travel landscape in Scandinavia, which was basically non-existent. But, you know, there was at least 2 companies to write about. It was TravelStart and Mr. Jet. And of course, we bloated this. And I sent it out on various of these travel tech forums that I was member of. And, you know, 3 months later, I got an offer, and I sold the company to a German company who had tons of money from Goldman Sachs and Deutsche Telekom. Now, they plowed tons of money into my business and their other businesses that they were acquiring and building, and made me head of international business development. So I flew like freaking everywhere for a year and a half, trying to figure out what I was doing. And year and a half later, the bottom goes out of the market. Our IPO plans, were shelved forever, and the company that acquired me went bankrupt. And so now was, okay, how can I salvage Travelstart at least? So everything went in on that, and I managed to salvage that. That's the story for the books, how that went. But I managed to salvage it, and half a year later, 9/11 happens, and we almost go bankrupt again, and we managed to fix that somehow as well. And later, I partnered up with lastminute.com because they had quite a big business in Sweden, which was then they were losing tons of money. And Brent, he liked me, I liked him, and so we basically took on Last Minute as a license to run it for them in Scandinavia. And they were, of course, listed at the time, and I gave them a very, very good offer, but they gave me an offer that was much, much, much better. So they actually paid me lots of money to do what we did, which was great. But one unexpected and positive thing was to launch in South Africa, which was never in our plan. My plan was always, okay, let's build this for a few years and then just sell it off and do something different. And but the interesting thing was, for me, moving to a new continent with my family and setting up business here, is that I could use my sort of almost couple of decades, or at least a decade of experience, and apply it in a new environment. And it was just like, you took a flower and just replanted it in new and fertile soil, and that flower just started to grow like crazy, and became something different than what it was before. Doing business in Africa is actually not easy, and I realized this Swedish sort of very inclusive, flat structure. Come on, we're a team. We'll do this together. That didn't really work in Africa. So I needed to find people who could sort of be, some sort of layer between myself and the rest of the team here, not to be eaten up by everybody. COVID, of course, came, and we had to rethink what we're about, and I had to think about why am I doing this in the first place, and what is it that I'm excited about, and what is it, what do I hold to be true, and what makes me want to go up in the morning. And it's this whole thing about entrepreneurship, and I would say to some degree developing people, developing things that weren't there before. So so I we had a little bit of a plan on, we had bought a couple of companies, we invested in a couple of companies, and we thought maybe we should just do more of that. And so that's, I think, where we are today as a business. We also opened up an innovation hub in Cape Town, which is doing really well. We're the biggest innovation hub here, actually the only one to talk about, to be honest. And all our businesses today, we are in payments, we're in insurance, we have a new initiative in loyalty, we are in channel management, and various kind of things. I think that personally, I'm turning 65. I've actually turned 65 this year, and I think I'm actually having more fun than I've had in my whole working life right now. And I live in the greatest city in the world. I work with some fantastic people. We do fun things together with Web and Travel, and So that's, that's exactly where we are now. I think we've entered into an area of the new Renaissance. During the Renaissance, art and science, they went hand in hand. Artists use maths, anatomy, and perspective to make their work maybe more realistic. And scientists, engineer worked with them also to discover and experiment with new stuff and new materials. And people like Leonardo da Vinci, that we know really well, and others, they were pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Mix of creativity and curiosity really, expanded the horizons of everything at the time. And I think that this is exactly where we are right now. I used to be a DJ. I always try to put things into perspective of music. How did, what happened in music during certain times? So I go back to sort of, the late 70s, when I started as a DJ. So Michael Jackson's album, Off the Wall was his first sort of big solo album. That album set off the area which we call in music the blockbuster area, where it was like a 20 plus year period, where the artists and record labels, they made more money than ever before. And it was just an incredible area of excess and profits, and also of creativity. But so Michael Jackson's, Off the Wall was made by Quincy Jones, the best musicians in the world that you can find in the best studios, etc. It's cost tens of millions of dollars to make the album. Then the Technics SL1200 vinyl player. It's a technical marvel, changed dance music, and sort of came in the beginning of the 80s. And but Rocket, made by Herbie Hancock, is basically a very simple tune played on top of a guy who's scratching, and he's scratching an SL1200. And I think he's got a record, and they say fresh, and they sort of scratch that throughout the song. That made it to the top 100 Billboard Dance, and that made hip hop go absolute mainstream. And this opened up a whole flurry of innovation where mashups became very, very popular. You took pieces of songs and you mix that into other songs as you were playing live. But then the Roland SP1200 came, that could do sampling digitally. And this is, the first like real popular song was Pump Up the Volume with Mars. And that really exploded this whole scene. And this, of course, they could do these songs on a fraction of what the record companies produced, the likes of Michael Jackson's album. And I believe that business today is already going in the same direction. Everything gets cheaper, more people can create. And I believe that AI is the ultimate sampler tool that is going to set up, a flurry of innovation, in business in general. But, we're talking about online travel here, or travel. And I think, so my thesis is that that tens of thousands and thousands of companies, they will ultimately destroy, the booking.com of this world and Expedias, etc. Because they won't be destroyed by one new player. They will be destroyed of thousands of new players that are more targeted, do things super cheap and super fast. And so that's sort of that's a little bit how I see the future. I think that there will be massive personalization, but the personalization will not come from the players. They will not tell Stephan, this is what we want for you, but Stephan, I will decide, because I will own my own life, my own digital life in a wallet, and I will decide how I personalize my life, and it will all comes from me and not from the big players. So one thing that I'm a strong believer in, that thousands of small, agile, smart player will outplace the big ones. They will still be around, obviously, because of their size today. I mean, we said 30 years ago, nobody's going to use the GDSs in the future. Well, the GDSs are still around. So, but I think that their role will definitely be different. So personalization will be super important. I think atoms will be super important. We will talk a lot about. I mean, I think we'll go back to the days where we do stuff with our hands will be more important. The kind of food that we do will be more eat will be more important. Experiences will be super important. Design, spirituality. I think the next 20 years, classical values will be restored, and we'll have a new renaissance. So that's how I see it play out.